Well, alright then. Greetings, Hollowheads, and welcome back to the channel. Before we begin this long-awaited sequel about the long-awaited sequel, you guys had some very helpful tips in the comments of the previous ranking video. So, 3 things about the original game's ranking before we get started. First off, yes, I know about Dreamgate. That's not really the point of the video. Plus, considering how loose progression is in that game, when do you think one should assume the player has acquired the 900 Essence to unlock it? Second, and perhaps more fair, the top 10 being combat rather than runback-centric is a bit unfair of me, especially when the whole point of Godhome is that you can refight bosses in the Hall of Gods, so you don't need to do the Pantheons as a runback? My bad. Luckily, we shouldn't have that problem with Silksong, at least yet, and at least for the most part. Third and finally, obviously this video is coming out before any of the DLC for Silksong, so I do plan on making an updated version of this list, but that won't be until all the future DLC is out, with whatever new bosses and abilities that brings. Even with all that in mind, we have 46 bosses to rank again, and this is pre-DLC. Team Cherry are madmen. How mad? Well, let's see firsthand just how masochistic they were with Silksong's runbacks. Obvious spoilers are obvious. Also, Summon Savior is not on here because, well, you know, it would win by default. Number 47, Skull Tyrant in Bone Bottom. Starting off strong, we literally have to do nothing. The boss comes to us. If you happen to die against this rabid bull of a bug after having sat on the Bone Bottom bench, you'll simply spawn on the ground where the bench was. I say was because the tyrant broke it, as well as our hearts. Number 46, Garmin and Zaza. If I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't sure what losing to this duo meant for 3 whole playthroughs, even though I fought them in 2 of them. Why? Well, you kinda have to try to lose to them. No offense to them. Just like the next entry on the list, it's a friendly duel with NPCs, so losing to them simply means you get knocked out and you wake up on the ground right before the fight. That's nice, I guess, except you don't get the benefit of having your tools refreshed. Oh well. Number 45, Chakra. There will likely be plenty of you that never got the chance to spar with our resident map ninja before starting Act 3, and that's a crying shame. Compared to the previous duel, she's actually quite a challenge to keep up with. That said, she's still nice enough to just knock you out, so the run back to her fight is simply waking up next to her ring stake and ringing it again. Number 44, First Sinner. If this fight worked the way one would expect, the run back through the tunnels under the slab would be much more grating. However, what happens in the jail cell stays in the jail cell apparently, so Hornet just wakes up on the floor like she just had a bad trip. Just wake up, walk in the door, and attempt to absorb your aunt again. Number 43, Moss Mother. The first boss in the game should probably have a very short run back. Not that you should need it. Luckily, Team Cherry was nice enough to toss us a bone. It's just 2 hops up from the bench and you're there. Number 42, Bell Beast. Oh look, the second boss. So far so good. Once again, it's just a couple of jumps with no threat of damage. Easing us in very nicely, I see. Let's see how long that trend keeps up. Number 41, Bell Eater. Jumping ahead a few hours, we have most people's first boss of Act 3. Fittingly enough, it's another fight in the Bellways, but this time, Bellfriend comes to our aid. Before she can, though, we gotta hop down this vertical shaft and rough up the evil centipede a bit. Good thing almost every Bellway has a bench right there. Oh yeah, this boss can be fought under any Bellway station, so the run back may vary a bit. However, most everyone will fight it under the Grand Bellway in the Citadel, which has a bench inches from the hole. Number 40, Broodmother. Hornet really hates the flies in the slab, and honestly, I get it. The arena for this fight may only be a few feet from the nearest bench, but it is truly disgusting. In addition, the boss herself doesn't even show up until you slaughter a few of her children. Gross and cowardly. No wonder Hornet hates them. Number 39, Lost Lace. As with the previous entries thus far, there is nothing that can hurt you between the nearest bench and the boss. However, diving into the void to face the true final boss of Silksong has a brief cutscene that you cannot skip. On repeat fights, the cutscene is much shorter, but still a few moments of required reprieve before Lace can start beating you to death again. Number 38, Second Sentinel. Not sure why this fight needed to happen, but I'm not one to argue with the logic of a robot. Second Sentinel has set up our duel in the storage room of its inert comrades, which luckily is only a couple of screen transitions away from the bench. Unlike the majority of the area, this lower section of high halls has no dangerous platforming or enemies, so getting back is a breeze. Number 37, The Unraveled. The optimal way to shorten this boss's runback is to manage the elevator correctly. If you die, the elevator will still be at the bottom of the shaft. Step on the button to call it, then jump down the shaft immediately. You want to get to the connecting passage across the shaft before the elevator reaches it. Then once the elevator rises past you, drop the rest of the way and step on the button before proceeding to the pit, to set up the next potential runback. No threat of damage, just a bit of planning. Number 36, Nihilith. The last two bosses that have no possible way for you to take damage before the fight, we have 2 of the 5 memory fights. The only reason they're both higher on the list than Second Sentinel and the Unraveled is the time it takes to wake up, play your needle in, and get back up before continuing. The shorter trip of the 2 is Nihilith, Heart of the Forest. After the frantic duel with Seth, who we will be seeing soon, Nihilith is much more forgiving if you ask me. It helps that you simply play your needle in and wake up in the memory, jog to the left, drop down to the Bramble of Thorns, easy. Number 35, Scarsinger Carmelita. If one were to include the small enemy gauntlet prior to the fight as part of the runback, the Hunter Queen would be a bit higher on the list, but if I were to do that, there would be several other bosses with ad waves that would make this ranking much more complex. The only enemy wave-gated boss factored into the runback will be very obvious later. Carmelita, though, is just a hop, skip, and jump over the Opera House stage to join in the performance. Number 34, Lace in Deep Docks. We are now in the territory of bosses where you could take damage on the way, but you really shouldn't. Realistically, the first couple in this section are less annoying than the previous couple. First in this category is the first duel with the favored Silken Child. Once again, the fight is just one screen transition away, but you could theoretically fall into the lava immediately before the fight. Theoretically. Number 33, Lace in the Cradle. Similarly, the second Lace fight is just a couple of jumps to the elevator. You're probably even more unlikely to get hit by the gears down here, but the additional length of waiting on cutscenes means that the runback takes a bit longer. Number 32, Lost Garmund. Unlike the duo fight in Act 2, Garmund's corrupted form in Act 3 can actually wreck you if you're not careful. So too can the runback if you fall into the many pits of sand carvers. Just be careful and you should be fine. Number 31, Shrine Guardian Seth. The duel with Seth is hard fought, but so long as you forked over a few rosaries for the nearby Underworks bench, the runback is mostly danger-free. There's just this one little quick dash to the left you'll need to do once you've opened the shortcut past the thorns. Other than that, it's just a good bit of sprinting straight. Number 30, Widow. The source of the haunting of Bellheart, Widow is a star milestone boss in Act 1. Luckily, so long as you've opened the shortcut back to the Bell Bench to the west, the runback is just a couple of sprinting long jumps and a couple of splinters to ignore. Number 29, Morwing Act 2 and 3. Here we have a boss that can be fought in 2 different places, depending on if and when you fight it. That's why the number of bosses on the list here is 47, even though the number of bosses you're actually fighting is 46. Morwing can first appear in Act 1, blocking the way to Bellheart from the east. However, if you rode to Greymoor with the Flea Caravan, or entered Bellheart from the west prior to fighting it, the Morwing will bide its time, letting you explore the area in peace. Once you reach Act 2, however, the beast moves here, just west of the Greymoor Bellway. The closest bench is in Halfway Home, making it a much shorter run than the Act 1 encounter. If you somehow make it to Act 3 without going here and defeating the creature, it can still be fought here, though it will now be empowered with void attacks. Of course, given that the arenas never lock you in, you can totally finish the game without ever killing this thing. Numbers 28 and 27, Trobio and Tormented Trobio. Speaking of Act 2 and 3 variants of the same boss, the 2 Trobio fights are in the same arena with the same closest bench in the Grand Bellway. The one difference between them is the enemies, and lack thereof, in the adjoining room of the Coral Chambers. In Act 2, there's an envoy and chorister that will wake up right outside the Bellway with a reed a little further up. In Act 3, the duo on the floor are gone, making the runback just a little bit less dangerous. Also, if you haven't picked up the double jump yet, you'll have to pogo the bells to the right, making you a little more likely to be hit by the reed. This means that I put Tormented Trobio as number 28 and the non-emo variant as number 27. Regardless of which one you're running back to, so long as you just keep moving, it's very unlikely that the enemies will have time to react to you before you're back on the stage. Number 26 and 25, Fourth Chorus and Savage Beastfly in Farfields. As with the previous 2 entries, we've got another pair of bosses in the same arena, hence I put them together again. These bosses are very different though, and their runbacks actually do have a slight difference. The Savage Beastfly being an Act 2 boss means you'll likely have at least Clawline before you fight it, making traversal that much safer and quicker. In addition, you could come from the Bellway bench if you prefer, mostly because the platforms over the lava are all level on the left side. For the Fourth Chorus fight, you have none of those extra options, so I would say the runback is just a slightest bit harder. Case is made, Savage Beastfly goes in spot 26, and 4th Chorus goes in spot 25. Number 24, Crawfather. After getting the Craw's court date summons, it's best to bench at the Greymore Bell Shrine. From there, just sprint right and fall. Then just keep going right, retracing your steps from much earlier in the game on your way to activate the Craw's balloons. This new door awaits you, giving you access to the courtroom. All told, the only possible dangers are the random background Craws in the area, but it is a decent length run. Number 23, Phantom. Once you've made it to the exhaust organ, the worst is over. Break the bench free of thread, and the elevator free of its ramshackle supports. Now it's only a few remaining wall jumps between the spikes and through the vents. Just be careful of the occasional steam blast. Not like they're foreshadowing anything. Number 22, Skull Tyrant in the Marrow. As with the Court of Craws, the closest bench to this rather simple beast is the Bell Shrine of the area. In this case, the one that's just to the right of where the Bell Beast boss room is in the Marrow. However, for that path to be the quickest route, you do need to go all the way around and underneath, just to the right of the tram platform to open the shortcut gate. After that, it'll just be a case of dodging a couple falling rocks and this very poorly placed Killick, and you're there. Number 21, Four Brothers Cygnus and Grawn. Just like the previous entry on the list, this placement is entirely dependent on one crucial shortcut. In this case, it's one of the 4 simple keys. If you use a simple key on the door in Deep Docks, the run back from the bench near Forge Daughter is very manageable. Just be careful of spikes during the long drop down and you're there. If you do not unlock this door, the path through from the far fields is a nightmare of explosions and lava. Please wear the magma bell. Number 20, Sister Splinter. Now, skipping this boss entirely is actually quite easy if you look up what you need to do. But for those who want the full experience, the run back isn't too terrible, assuming you paid for the bell bench in the middle of the Shellwood. After you've opened the elevator just to the right of said bell bench, it's a pretty clean zigzag up to the boss arena. Just be careful floating over this bed of thorns and you'll be fine. Number 19, Disgraced Chef Lagoli. As with the Chapel of the Beast, the closest bench is inoperable at the start, but can be fixed without leaving the room. I'll let you figure it out. Once that situation is remedied, it's not a long run back, just a very close call with a couple of enemies and a quick bit of spike pogoing. Number 18, Gur the Outcast. The nearest bench to the fight is actually very close, though most people will get got by the ambush after coming from Pilgrim's Rest or something. On your second pass at it, assuming you didn't win the first time, just run past the tripwire for the cage and do some careful pogoing and grappling over to Sprintmaster Swift's bench. Then turn right around, do that again to get back to the tripwire, and it's a short trip, but the platforming is rather precarious. Number 17, Grandmother Silk. Ah, GMS. How awesome your design for such a frail form. The higher being at the crest of the Citadel is not the most egregious runback, but it can be a bit time-consuming. Assuming you broke open the shortcut in the long pipe shaft, you'll head straight left and up from the terminus bench until you can't go up anymore. Then go left and more up. You get it. The whole game leading up to this has been about going up, so it makes sense that the one at the heart of it all would be more up. The only dangers here are the spike platforms that you'll need to clear and in some cases pogo to reach the peak of the cradle. No enemies though, other than your nagging apprehension. Number 16, Savage Beastfly in the Chapel of the Beast. First things first, if you didn't know, you can disable the trap on the bench without leaving the room. I will not explain further, you can figure it out. This run back will have one major difference depending on when you complete the Chapel of the Beast. If you brute forced your way through Hunter's March before you reached Greymore or Shellwood, Chakra will assist you in the enemy arena halfway through the area. This is the perfect place to buy her map. If, however, you do not meet her here and fight the arena alone, she will appear just to the right of the tall room on your way to Chapel of the Beast. Ideally, this second placement is where you want her to appear. The reason? She kills the Scar Stalker and disables his trap. If you meet her in the arena, this ant and his trap will be the one major roadblock on your way back to the boss. Other than that, the path back is not difficult. Just drop down, go right a ways, drift up, and you're back at the chapel. A bit on the long side, but not too dangerous. Number 15, Morwing, Act 1. The first place you can fight Morwing is in this wide plateau just east of Bellheart. If you're someone who focuses on just making progress and not being thorough with your exploration, you likely fought it here, rather than riding with the fleas. If that is the case, never fear. While the trek is long, it's not super dangerous. From halfway home, just keep heading straight left and down any chance you get. You will need to open a lever door by going around over the top through all the scissormen, but that's a one-time debacle. Also, if you speak to Garmin and Zaza during this section, you'll have the chance to have them aid in the fight, which is very cool. The only really annoying enemy placement during this longer run back is the Threadraker in the Act 2 and 3 boss room. However, if you time your jump and float just right, you can clear him. Number 14, Great Conch Flies, or Conch Flies, I'm not really sure how this is pronounced. As with another boss we'll be seeing in a bit, the biggest annoyance in this whole runback is one specific Driznit placement. Any other challenge in the runback from the station is just remembering where to stop falling. Once you're in the long room leading up to the boss, it's just a few sprinting jumps and you're there. You could come from the bench at the bottom of the area instead, but it's a longer trek. Either way, you'll have to pay for your bench location. If somehow you're broke and have no rosary strings in reserve, the run back from the Shellwood Bell Shrine is your best bet. A bit longer, but not really any more dangerous. Number 13. Moss Mothers. You'd think that any sort of run back in a weave nest would be simple. Well, kinda. It's mostly a long straight line to the left, but the Daves and the mini-Daves are in very unfortunate spots, forcing you to either stop and fight them or simply be very careful with your pogo timing. Any mistakes will lead to either a double damage bulldozing or a bump down toward the spikes, leading to a wrap back around. This one just teeters on the edge of frustrating to me. Number 12. Cogwork Dancers. As with the duo I just mentioned, the path back to the dancers is a long straight shot to the left, and as with the previous entry, it's made annoying because of the enemies directly in your path. If you have double jump before fighting the dancers, jumping over the grand reeds before they fully wake up is not too difficult at all, actually. Alternatively, if you have double jump, you could jump up to the Memoriam bench and only have to deal with one grand reed on the way back. However, most people will likely get here long before traversing Mount Fae, thus you'll either have to be very careful to pogo over them before they wake up, or wait for them to do their airborne attack and dash underneath them. Either way, 3 big enemies standing between Songclave and the dancers force you to take your time being cautious. Number 11. Pinstress. The fact that this fight is on Mount Fae is really all you need to know. Unlike other NPC fights, Pinstress wants this to be the way one of you guys goes out, and so she will not go easy on you. You can get back to this fight from a bench either above or below, but either path is a treacherous weave through spikes and an ever-present threat of falling. Having the double jump certainly helps climbing the mountain this time around, but it's still an annoyance. I found the fastest way back is by silk soaring right here next to the hole and then trying a skillful pogo on this wall of spikes. It's pretty quick, but still tricky. Number 10. Father of the Flame. Some people will have this higher, others may have this lower. I think this one barely makes it into the top 10 for me. The distance of the runback isn't bad at all. It all comes down to the RNG on whether or not the wisps will snipe you as you jump over the burning bugs. I found that just sprinting past everything works more often than not, but you can get absolutely wrecked if the game decides the wisps have locked onto you. It's not helped by the fact that the boss gives no silk when you hit it, so what you get from your cocoon is all you will get to heal with if you did get hit. Number 9. Clover Dancers. In addition to requiring clearing most of the area of Verdania to even access them, the Clover Dancers ask you to climb back through half the area to refight them. Even if you know exactly how to route through this maze of a zone, it gets grating. Once you get to this one part in the climb up to the Green Prince's throne room, this Verdanier is always there to chase you down, but you can usually just ignore him. Heaven forbid you go through the right-hand path, though, or the Escallions will never leave you alone. Number 8. Plasmified Zango. While the bench next to what's left of Xylitol is geographically closer, the risk of fighting all the Plasmiduses is just not worth it. The second closest bench, though, barely makes the situation better. Coming from one of the benches in Ruined Chapel means climbing up through the bottom entrance of the Wormways. Silk soaring up right in front of the big door is the quickest way up the first bit, but you'll still need to contend with the overgrown pilgrim blocking the entrance. After that, it's a lot of zigzagging up and down while steadily going left. 2 plasmids will try to ambush you on the way, but if you dodge their first spit, they'll run away briefly, giving you a chance to just dash past. Mostly, this runback is just tedious. Just like the boss. Number 7. Raging Conchfly. Conchfly? Whether you take the trek from the bench at the far east of the area or take the trek from the Blasted Steps Bellway, it's a long climb to get back to this fight. I would definitely say that the Bellway path is safer, though. The only real threats are a few poke nabbins and a few beds of spikes and worms, all of which are pretty easily dodged or pogoed. Number 6. Volt Verm. You can technically fight this thing before the Raging Conchfly, but it's much better to wait until after so you can use the bench in the Coral Tower. Even with that bench, though, getting into and through the Volt Nest is not easy, especially in Act 2. Even before that, there's one of the Sands of Carrick's trademark long platforming rooms between the tower and the nest. Good news is it's an easy one, and it's a lot simpler going downhill. You could come from the Bellway and Blasted Steps after opening the shortcuts, but it's an even longer trek with not much benefit. Number 5. Crust King Khan. Well, we've made it to the top 5. All of these are pretty insufferable, mostly due to just being extremely long-distance runs. For these first 2 of the top 5, the time it takes to re-enter the memory just adds to the time sink. Here's the one example of arena combat gatekeeping the boss that I would consider separate from the boss itself. There are 4 mob rooms prior to Khan. 3 can be skipped on refights by opening the big stalactite shortcut, but the final room must be refought before you can get back to the Tyrant. Honestly, said mob room is harder than the boss. You're basically having to fight 2 bosses back to back instead of 1. Number 4, Pale Stag. The Ghostly Cloverdeer of Legend is actually the longest distance runback in the game by my guesstimate. First, there's the time it takes for Hornet to wake up and re-enter the memory of Verdania. Then it's the process of climbing the entire left half of the area, full of Pendras and Cloverstags. Silksong helps, but it still takes forever. Good thing the boss isn't very complex. Number 3, Last Judge. Here she is, one of the 2 bosses that everyone knew would be toward the top. Given that this titan closes out Act 1 in a big thematic way, I really have no problem with the boss itself being this difficult. I quite enjoyed the challenge. The runback, however, is a travesty. Unless you found the back way into the Citadel via Phantom and managed to get your hands on the claw line, let alone the double jump, this runback is just belittling. Throw in a bunch of worm pitfalls, judges, and these pinball trigonometry flies, and it's just painful. Thankfully, Team Cherry agreed, at least a little bit, and nerfed the Sandcarver's damage, but this is still a runback I dread on subsequent playthroughs. Also, rip bozos. Number 2, Watcher at the Edge. If you say you found this guy naturally, I don't believe you. Once you know he's there, though, it really doesn't help matters. No matter which of the 2 closest benches you take, it's extremely tiresome to get back up to him. If you come from Pinstress's house, a la the main entrance to the area, you'll have to contend with the wind, then the Farlids, then the platforming on Coral. If you come from the station, the path is arguably safer, but a good bit longer, and you'll need to have a decent trajectory and some extra silk to grapple your way to the left side of this long room. From there, both paths have you take the timed Coral path back up and left over a row of spikes and then silk soar into the ceiling before this Driz Narga can shoot you. All told, I truly hope you don't have to fight this guy very many times. Number 1, Grohl the Great. Yes, even with the hidden bench, Grohl is the most painful boss runback in Silksong, and it's not even close. While baiting and avoiding enemies works in most areas, the Silken tribe doesn't take kindly to things like reason or discernible patterns. Nope, they lie in wait while the area's hazards and their traps put you on the back foot. Then, and only then, do they pop out, shoot projectiles at you, and then lurch away, never giving you a moment's peace. On top of that, throw in the constant fear of falling into the muck maggot water, and you've got a stressful, annoying, disheartening climb that leaves you tired and pissed off before the fight even starts. Oh yeah, and then the fight isn't even against the boss for the first several minutes, it's more enemies and hazards. I swear, if it wasn't gatekeeping Act 3, I would never fight this guy or his spiteful tribe ever again. End of story. All that said, it's not that bad on subsequent playthroughs when you know to get the Wreath of Purity long before clearing this literal godforsaken place. That's it! We made it! Honestly, given how many of you showed up in the comments of the previous runback ranking declaring Silksong's runbacks to be so much more painful, I was expecting worse. But making this list, I honestly don't see it. Granted, it does require a lot more prowess to master Hornet's kit than the Knights, but once you have, moving through the world is a breeze. Runbacks may be a bit longer as a whole, but when your basic movement is so much faster, the time between attempts is much shorter. I get the frustrations with the worst few runbacks in this game, certainly. Heck, I had sort of a crash out on the Last Judge in my first playthrough, but I don't think it's any worse than my first time fighting Soulmaster or Traitor Lord or Hive Knight. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all with the next Explain Badly video. Since we're on the topic of traversal, this one will probably be on areas and sub-areas. If you guys would like me to rank all of the enemy ambush rooms in both games, I would be more than happy to. Given how much more prevalent they are in Silksong, I've seen a lot of people talking about how they're worse than bosses in some cases. I'd be willing to rank them if you guys would be interested in seeing that. Let me know in the comments. With that said, see ya!